I'm going to give you a little intro here.
The Pinky and the Brain. Yes, Pinky and the Brain.
Hopefully I'm not blowing your ears out. Jeez. On the phone with me is Rob Paulsen. He is a man of many voices, including Pinky from Pinky and the Brain, a great Steven Spielberg Warner Brothers cartoon. How are you?
Oh, well, Pinky is doing fine. I'm not so sure about Rob, but Pinky is fine and very naughty today. Thank you.
Pinky's a little British.
Yes, he's quite British, from the tip of his pink little nose to the tip of his long, stinky tail, as far as I can say. And don't ask me why. It's just something that Mr. Spielberg thought was bright, and who's going to argue with Steven? Not me.
That's right. Now, have you ever met Steven Spielberg?
I have, actually. I've had, and I'll tell you, Dan, first of all, thank you very much for having me on your show. It's a real pleasure to talk to you. One of the things I've learned along the way in my career is often the people whom you meet that are at the top of their game are often the most lovely, down-to-earth, unpretentious people, and Mr. Spielberg is no exception. I remember I had the pleasure of working with him on a couple of things, but in particular, when the Animaniacs were going to premiere in the fall of '93, oh my God, almost 19 years ago, there was a giant party, a big launch party on the Warner Brothers lot, and all the writers, all the actors, musicians. It was a really big deal for Warner Brothers for many reasons, not the least of which is it was the Steven Spielberg production, like Tiny Toons. And so I was there with my son, who was probably 8 or 9 at the time, and I remember Mr. Spielberg walking up with Terry Semel and Bob Daly, who were the heads of the studio at the time. And I'm sure he had, people saying, this is Rob Paulsen, he was Pinky and Yakko and Dr. Scratch and stuff, meeting all the actors and stuff. And we met Steven before during some recording sessions and such, but he's a very busy man. At the time, I think he was working on Schindler's List or something. So anyway, this gentleman walks up to me and says, hey, Rob, nice to meet you, great work. I said, thank you very much, Mr. Spielberg, what a pleasure. Please call me Steven, blah, blah, blah. And Dan, that before I could get it out of my mouth, he looks at my son and he says, is this your boy? And I said, it is. He said, well, do you mind if we get a picture together?
That's great.
How classy is that?
Yeah,
right?
that's amazing.
It takes the onus off me. I'll never forget it. I've probably told that story 100 times. And it was. I mean, he's a really wonderful fellow. And when you can meet somebody that is not only nicer than you expected, but, their work is, of course, legendary. It just adds to the whole iconic picture.
And what is it? So when fans, I'm jumping the gun here kind of, but you'll be interacting with a lot of fans. Not only will you be on panels where people get to come and hear you at Emerald City Comic Con, but they'll actually get the chance to swing by a table and come and talk to you, get an autograph or whatever.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, because I'm going to be there with Billy West and John DiMaggio and Tara Strong, whom I just had on my podcast. I do a podcast every week called Talkin' Toons.
I've been listening.
Yeah, thank you, man, and it's been really well. Last week, we made it to the top 5 of all of the audio podcasts and entertainment in the film and TV department.
I think it's that's great. I think it's must listen if you are a voice actor or an aspiring voice actor. And I think anybody with more than a passing interest in animation should be listening to that as well. And you know what? At the end of my job's pretty fun, but I have days, like 13-hour days sometimes or whatever. Something doesn't go your way. And your podcast just cheers me up on the way home, just makes me smile, so it puts me in a different state.
Thank you so much, man. That is the ultimate compliment, because that's the whole reason I decided to do it. I mean, there's no charge for it. It really is a labor of love, and what I'm finding is people are saying the same thing. I mean, you're a professional, you're in the business, but what I'm finding is there's so many fans who have this incredible love of not only the medium, but of the people who participate in making it. And because our profession is so anonymous, unless we're at a con or something, or I'm doing a lot of public speaking and stuff, you don't really know that people are really interested. So I'm starting to do this podcast, and there are like 8,000 podcasts in the TV and film list at iTunes, and we got to number 5 last week.
Yeah, that's great.
With no celebrities, and I mean celebrities to the extent that people know who we are, in the cartoon thing. But the response has been overwhelming, and I just love it. And so people come back to me and say, just what you did. It cheered me up. It made me laugh. It's very impromptu. We do all the voices, So, yeah, come on out to the con, because the Emerald City group is going to be great. Like I said, Tara and Maurice LaMarche, my friend the Brain, will be there. And Jess Harnell, who's my brother and, my partner and / brother in crime, who lives with me in the water tower, my friend Wacko. And, man, we're going to have a great time.
And you've said, I've heard you mention before that people can get pretty emotional when they meet you.
Yes.
And how do you react to that?
Well, I react in I hope, a very appropriate way. That is that I can't even begin to tell you what it means to me that there are these characters are very precious to people, and it's not like I ever took that, pardon me, for granted. But when you meet people and they say, I got to tell you, when I heard you doing Raphael's voice, or when I hear you doing Pinky, or when I hear you doing Carl Weezer from Jimmy Neutron, or whatever, my mother passed away a couple years ago, and she and I used to watch Jimmy Neutron together. Or when I was a kid, my parents got a divorce, and my brother and I sort of hung on to each other and watched Ninja Turtles, and it got us through that. And, forgive me if when I hear your voice now, it makes me pretty emotional. I've had people break down and giving me a hug and start to cry. And it's really it has to be pretty much the ultimate compliment, because when you can have a part in a character, and again, I understand that I'm just a part of it. I'm just the actor. I can't draw them. I don't write. I'm just a goofy actor. But when I find that I've had a part in creating a character that has such a profound effect on an audience, it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with ratings. It has nothing to do with action figures. It's purely an emotional connection that I'm just so incredibly grateful for. And so that's why I've started doing a lot more cons and personal appearances. I speak at colleges now, and I find that the audiences really laugh and they really enjoy it. And then afterwards, I get to sign stuff and meet people and hang with them. And inevitably, in every group, whether it's 50 or 5,000, there are several people who have those types of stories. Because, I've been fortunate, Dan. I've been doing this now almost 30 years. So I have people who, dug stuff from the original Ninja Turtles all the way up to, Tough Puppy and Fairly Odd Parents. And now I'm doing the new Ninja Turtles. I just literally came from a session this morning, and that'll be out this fall from Nickelodeon. So I've kind of come full circle, and I'm at a place where I get a chance to meet these people, and often I meet people who have their own children and are still listening to my stuff. So it's very, very flattering.
I want to bust out, or want you to bust out a few of your voices, but I did want to tell you on that note, on the whole emotional note, when I was at a voice conference, which we talked about earlier, June Foray came out.
Oh, isn't she delightful?
Yeah, and she's like 95 now, so she was a little bit younger then, a couple of years ago. I met her beforehand. Great. She was kind of quiet, but it was awesome because she's a legend. She does Rocky the Flying Squirrel and Witch Hazel and all these great characters. Then later that night, there was a dinner, and she came out on stage and immediately goes into Rocky the Squirrel's voice and says something like, "Hokey smokes, everybody."
Yep. That's right.
And a tear just dropped out of my eye. And I'm like, oh, my God. And I'm sitting with a bunch of people I just met, and I'm like, oh, my God, this is crazy. But it was as if you got to figure, you're in the womb, you hear your parents' voice, your mom's voice, whatever. And before I was aware of television, I probably was familiar with that in the background.
How about that? And the thing is that that's a very profound effect, and I'm so glad you used that analogy about being in the womb, because I did the same thing. I met June at work 25 years ago. So I met her when she was 70, Dan.
Wow.
Okay? And so we were doing Smurfs at Hanna-Barbera, and I walked in and I said, I knew exactly, of course, who she was, and I said, "Ms. Foray, my name is Rob Paulsen, and, please forgive me. I know you get asked this a lot, but if I close my eyes, would you just say Hokey smoked Bullwinkle?" And, of course, she did. And immediately I was transported back to Livonia, Michigan, where I was a 10-year-old eating Cocoa Krispies, watching Rocky and Bullwinkle. And I will never forget it. And so now, if I ever have the opportunity to have the same effect on people, my God, how much more can you ask as an actor?
Right.
It's the most beautiful thing in the world, and I'm so grateful. And I promise you, it's not something that I take lightly. I am so grateful for this opportunity to be able to have 30 years of consistent work in which I've been able to take care of my family and put braces on my kids' teeth and put them through college and all that. And then talk to nice people like you and meet nice people at the Emerald City Con. And I'm going to walk away with another pile of fabulous memories
right.
that I didn't have before I got to Seattle. So I'm pretty much, with all due respect to Lou Gehrig, I'm the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
You came along at a good time, too. I think cartoons, they started becoming real quality again, and things that parents could watch with their kids and maybe get something else. You know, there were little subversive jokes in there that only the adults could get. So I want you to, at the risk of turning into the human jukebox here, I'd love to hear some voices. On the Looney Tunes show, which has been nominated for some Emmys, it's a brand new series last year, you do, there's a pair of gophers, Mac and Tosh. Love that.
I know, and you know that from, of course, those of you who watched the original Looney Tunes years ago, you remember those goofy gophers, both of British extraction, and the other gopher is, God bless him, Jess Harnell. And the interesting thing about, forgive me, I'm outside of my parole officer's office, and my ankle bracelet is going on. But one of the things I find so interesting is people say to me, say, God, those gophers are pretty, how shall I say it, flamboyant. I say, well, we prefer to say that these two gophers are two young rodents about whom there's absolutely no ambiguity with respect to their sexual preference. And I'm very comfortable with that.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Animaniacs, you do a few voices. Yakko, Warner?
Right, I'm Yakko Warner. Hello, people listening to Dan Roberts. Aren't you the smartest people in Seattle?
Oh, thanks.
United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Haiti, Jamaica, Peru. That's me. I'm Yakko. I'm the big brother.
And then I do the studio psychiatrist from Animaniacs all those years ago, whose name was Dr. Smith. And I stole that voice from my hero, Peter Sellers, who is, of course, dead, so he's not using it anymore. And then, of course,
and, you know, Pinky was originally part of the Animaniacs with my friend the Brain, and now we spun off into our own show, which has been off the air for 10 years or something. So luckily, people have DVDs, and they still love Pinky.
Absolutely. That holds up, too. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you mentioned. You played Raphael in the older series, and now you're playing Donatello, if my internet information is... Yeah. So what's the difference between the two voices? Can you give me...
Well, let's see. Raphael is pretty much me, and Donatello is a little higher because he's in this new iteration of Turtles, I'm the sort of smart guy, the genius guy, and I'm a little more studious. But I suppose anybody would say, oh, yeah, it pretty much sounds like Rob. And I was talking today of one of the creators or one of the writers of the new Turtles, Jeff, the genius producer, writer at Nick. And I said, you know, I get a lot of people from the, you know, that know me from the original Turtles almost 25 years ago. And they're saying, well, you know, how is that going to be different? And what I tell them is, look, it really doesn't have that. It really doesn't matter. It'll be a new iteration. And frankly, the show, you know, the new Turtles and the toys and all that, the merchandising will be geared around people probably 6 or 7 to 12 or 13. And but that doesn't mean that folks who were fans of the original Turtles can't watch it. I mean, we have,
and they probably will.
And they probably will. And some folks will like it. Some folks won't. But, you know, that happens with everything. The big buzz now is people emailing me daily about what do you think about what Michael Bay has said, that Turtles are not going to be, you know, spawned from this
the ooze.
Radioactive ooze. They're going to be aliens. I'm saying, well, look, man, I don't know. I can't pass judgment on it. I don't quite get why they would want to change it, but
yeah,
I'm not Michael Bay. And
there's a new press release on that every day on that controversy.
Sure, and you know, it's generating cool publicity. And if it sucks, there won't be another one. If it's great, they'll make another one. You know, it's the way it goes. And I'm, you know, got my hands full working on the new, you know, Ninja Turtles TV show with Greg Sipes as Michelangelo and Sean Astin as Raphael and Jason Biggs as Leonardo, and we're having a hell of a good time.
That begs the question, then, what is the origin story of the new Ninja Turtles TV series? Is it the same as the Ooze, or is it...
Same thing. We are Turtles, baby. We're still...
Right on.
And matter of fact, it's TMNT. It is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the only difference I can see, I mean, you know, there are some differences in the way the Turtles look this time, which is not unusual. And one of the things that I think is cool, Dan, is that the Turtles are different heights and sizes. So that's kind of neat. They're not all sort of cookie-cutter Turtles. They're different sizes and shapes, and they're all brothers, but they are a little different. And I'm cool with that. I mean, you can't just keep rehashing the same old thing. I, on the other hand, am so flattered that Viacom and Nickelodeon and the producers would, you know, after a huge audition, said, oh, yeah, we'll go ahead and use Rob again. How cool is that? I mean, I'm so flattered. My kid said to me when I got the job, he said, Dad, you're going to be the answer to a Jeopardy question. My God, you know?
Yes, you kind of are. Good point. Good point.
It's pretty neat to be able to be old enough to be their grandfather and come back and still get to do a turtle voice is a really cool gig. And
well, I mentioned to I mentioned to Dave Coulier I had the chance to talk to you on Friday.
Oh, he's one of my best friends.
Oh, right on. He was really great. He was a nice guy. But I had to ask him because he had appeared on some Scooby-Doo stuff, and I've been watching Scooby-Doo Mystery Inc., which is a pretty clever, you know, it's different. It's more, what am I trying to say? Like, it's meta. It's, you know, there's all these in-jokes if you're a Scooby-Doo fan. But Frank Welker has been doing, he does Freddy, right?
Yeah, since like 1969.
And he sounds exactly the same.
How about that? And Frank is also one of my best friends. Frank and Dave and I are golf buddies. Actually, Dave and I are hockey/golf buddies because he's from Detroit as well. And Cooler and I have been friends for 25 years. Same with Frankie. Frankie I've known for almost 30 years. And Frank is, to the day, 10 years older than I. So how cool is that, you know, we have a gig where people don't care. They still love Freddie. And Frank is, you know, he's a god. He's a legend. And he's just about the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet. Fantastic.
That's great. One of the, going back to your voices, I have two more for you.
Yeah.
Putting my quarter in the Rob Paulsen jukebox here.
Problem.
Johnny Quest was brought back. A lot of people grew up on Johnny Quest, and he was brought back in the 80s, and you played Haji.
I did, and I was one of the folks that, you know, was so thrilled to get that gig because when I was a kid, Johnny Quest was an ABC show on Friday night. It was a primetime cartoon. And it was very cool and great music and a great opening title song. And so, yeah, here I am, you know, a kid who's born in Detroit and raised around Flint, Michigan. And one of the first big jobs I got before before Ninja Turtles was Johnny Quest. And I got to play Haji and say, look, Grace, it's a pterodactyl. Sim, sim, salabim, you know. So that
Pull
was
off a little
cool.
magic.
Yeah,
and
fantastic.
I read Wikipedia is a source, an infinite source of misinformation, so hopefully this is true. No offense to Wikipedia. I guess that wasn't the greatest thing to say.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
But Taco Bell, you were a dog on we weren't the Taco Bell dog, were you?
No. They're talking about an animated couple of critters. There were two animated characters called Nacho and Dog. And Nacho was this weird character played by Eddie Beeson, who is, you know, a kind of an iconic nerd, the ultimate nerd, and just a great guy. And I played this character called Dog. And I think it was kind of a character like this, as I recall, almost like a character I did in the 80s called Rude Dog and the Dweebs. And that was also a voice I sort of used with a different tweak for a character called Steelbeak on Darkwing Duck. I had this, I was a giant rooster with a big beak made out of steel, hence my name. So that kind of voice has come in very handy for me several times. But no, the Taco Bell dog was Carlos Elizraki, whom I'm also going to get on my podcast. He's a fantastic actor, comedian, and it was a regular on Reno 911.
Oh, yeah.
And was also the voice of Rocco on Rocco's Modern Life, and just a wonderful actor. So he's going to be on the podcast coming up, too.
Well, I was going to ask you about some voice acting tips, but I mean, people can go to the podcast and learn so much.
Yeah, that really is the best. It's kind of one-stop shopping. I've got like 33 podcasts now, and I've got some with young actors like my friend Brian Stevenson, who's just coming out, or just coming out. That has a different connotation. I got to be careful. But just starting out in the business because, you know, what I did to get started is different than the way things are now. So had Brian on. He helps people, you know, to learn about what he went through to make demos and get acting coaches. And so, yeah, listen to the podcast because they're free. There are a bunch of them. They're funny. They're informative. And you get a lot of really cool, up-to-the-minute information. And I hope they're helpful. And
you also, if people want to get an autograph for you that can't go to the convention, they can write you. And the cool thing about this is you give the money to charity, correct?
Right. I split all the money from I calculated once with my wife that I'd signed over 10,000 autographs for free, which is fine. I'm happy to do it because I'm very flattered that someone would ask. But, you know, when people stop asking is when it gets to be a problem. But
right.
I'd never charge for them unless it was part of my, you know, appearance fee. Sometimes that's the deal with the promoter of a convention or something that you charge for your autograph, and I understand that's cool. But on my own, I've never charged, and so I am now charging $25. But all the proceeds are split between Operation Smile and the Wounded Warriors Project, and people know about the Wounded Warriors Project. It's just wonderful, and Operation Smile is a charity by which these maxillofacial surgeons travel around the world helping children who were born with cleft palates and cleft lips to repair them at no charge, because I figured it was a perfect fit. My job, ostensibly, is to make children and, young or old, laugh.
Right.
And so I figured if I can help them, be able to laugh, then they can laugh at my work. And so, and just last week I learned that the folks at Operation Smile had given me my own webpage on their webpage. So if you go to operationsmile.org/Rob Paulsen, you'll see my page and my blurb, and you can contribute that way, or you can send, you can go to robpaulsenlive.com, robpaulsenlive.com. That will hook you up with a way to get an autographed photo, the proceeds of which will be split between the two charities. So, yeah, it's really helpful on both ends, and I'm grateful and very blessed to be able to do it. So that, and also I'll be able to sign stuff for you when I see you in Seattle. Which
is coming up this weekend. I have one more question. I know you got to go. I'm a huge Brian DePalma fan.
Oh, my goodness.
Body Double. You had a part in that.
I did. I played a pornographic movie cameraman, and I remember when I was working on it thinking, man, this is kind of a weird vibe, because it was Brian DePalma. It was who had just gotten done making Scarface, and he was getting all this flack for making a movie that people thought should have had an X rating because of the violence. And his response was, well, if they want an X-rated movie, I'll give them one. So here we're doing Body Double, and I'm like, man, this is weird. And one night, years later, I remember I was in bed, and my kid was with some of his buddies watching, TV in the playroom, and he came in and woke me up. He said, hey, Dad, did you do a movie called Body Double?
Oh, no.
And immediately my wife started laughing, and she said, I told you. I was like, yeah, it was me. He said, wow, that was weird. And I said, I know. And it was, but, the experience was great, because you don't always get a chance to work with Brian DePalma, and it was wonderful. I really didn't know what I was in for, and learned a valuable lesson, but the check cleared. And
what was the valuable lesson? Read the script?
There's never a point in your career where you can't say, I don't think I can do this. But hey, I was 27 or 28 years old. It was great fun. I didn't have to take my clothes off. I was surrounded by a bunch of people who were in various stages of undress. So it was a little uncomfortable. But hey, it makes for great fodder to talk about, and I'm glad you brought it up.
And I bring it up because I actually, he definitely crosses the lines, pushes the envelope. I mean, he gets criticized for that a lot. But man,
he's a great director, though.
Great suspense.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
One of my favorite directors. And I'm glad you brought it up. And you know what? As far as I'm concerned, I'm not one of those actors who cringes at that stuff, man. If I've done it and it's out there, then it's fair game, and we can talk about whatever you want. So I appreciate you bringing it up.
No problem. We'll see you at the comic. I'm actually hosting a few of the panels. So.
Oh, great, buddy. Well, I can't wait to see you again, and thanks again for taking time to have me on your show. And I'll see you next weekend.
Thank you, Rob. We'll see you there.
All right, buddy. Thanks, Dan.
You bet.